then the other thing I want to talk about is Parse. So let's see what that init parse function is doing. Great. So this is and this is another typing thing in Python. John, could you do me a huge favor and bring over my power cord from the booth out there? I'm in a phone booth just around the corner from you. So Parse has this class called argument parser, which you can set up to parse all these different arguments, like version. So you can get the double dash version when you run the script. There is another argument, which is this verbose one. And this is a really fancy one that I've learned how to create in this arg parser that allows you to do it multiple times. So verbose. And by setting this thing, the action to be count, rather than actually setting the value of a constant, like this other one does, or like this one, if you don't specify what the action is, then it's just going to store a value, and you just tell it what type of value you want to store, and a default value for something like an integer, like the number of vectors, like that 5,000 that I passed in earlier. The other thing is, so this count action defaults to 0, and what I'm doing is counting up the number of V's that are passed, or the number of double dash verboses that were added to the command line. And then I can use that in the code to set the log level. And what I did was I subtracted it from the number of those ints multiplied by 10 from the error level. So it turns out these log levels in the logging package in Python start out at like around 50, I think it is, for error. What that does is so if you say -v, then it will go down from error to, I think, warning. Yeah, warning is the next one down. 10 down from error is warning. And the next one down from there is logging.info. And below that is .debug. And so that allows the user to step it down from to give more and more error messages. Okay, great. Let's see how far we got in running. Path is not defined. Oh, dang. That's probably didn't get very far in the running. Let's see what the who says. So we got all those imports happening, but we have vocab and vex. So we have the actual vectors. Okay, great. We have there's probably only, let's see how many of them there are. Hopefully 5,000 if everything worked in my arg parsing. Oops, it loaded all million of them. So somehow I didn't do things correctly. And the use of those arguments. It's like the Seinfeld episode where he was making a rental car reservation. You take down the reservation, but you don't actually keep the reservation. If you've ever tried to rent a car and showed up and they don't have the car you reserved. Anyway, I took down the argument of the number of vectors I should have loaded, but I somehow didn't do it. So let's fix that bug first. So it doesn't take as long to run. The whole reason why I created it was so I would have numvex. Let's see. Did I use numvex anywhere? Here it is. I used it in the display of the logging of what I did, but I didn't actually. Oh, no, I did. Okay. I used it in the naming of the column. Let's see. Did I pass it in as an argument to the load HT5 thing? Resources load HT5. Where's load HT5? Load HT5. Yep, I didn't pass it in as an argument. Numvex equals numvex args.numvex. These are all really common. I don't have to remember these variable names like args because these are very common naming conventions. You want to follow somebody else's naming of variables whenever you can, especially when it's used in a built-in package that's used by a lot of people. That way you don't have to remember things and your code is very similar to everybody else's. Args is a commonly used thing once you've passed it through the arg parser. I think it's KV, sys.argv. Argv is the name of the list of arguments that come in. So you could say sys.argv, and that would also be a thing. So argv is used for a list of arguments, because that's a 50-year-old variable name from the C programming language and the standard library there. And that's carried over into Python because he's following this best practice that you use variable names that other people are familiar with to make your code readable and understandable very easily. Anyway, args is that thing within Python once you've passed things through argparse. And that's an object that contains dotted attributes that contain the values that you pulled out of those arguments. And that's how I knew that this would hopefully will work. So I can run that script again, and it will only load 5,000 instead of 1 million. But since we got it, let's go ahead and work with it and actually have some fun with word vectors, because that's what this is all about.
Did you do the path also? Wasn't that?
Path. I'm sorry. Explain to me what I missed, John.
No, I thought there was a error on your script before that path wasn't defined.
Oh yes,
Maybe.
Thank you. I ignored the real message and just went ahead and fixed my own bug. Okay, so if not dest path, so that's happening in what file? We haven't imported path from pathlib in indexers, maybe? Indexers. Oh, util.py. So I need to open up util.py. And my linter probably should have pointed this out. So it's pointing out some unused imports. So I can comment those out. Okay, I'm going to do a best practice here so that you guys don't learn bad habits. Whenever you have don't comment code out. Just delete it. It exists in your repository on all your commits. The thing I probably need to import up there that's not working currently, I don't have my settings set up to actually scroll me to these other error messages. But you can see I got some stuff highlighted down below that my linter is telling me I got a problem. It's all these paths. And if I go to each one of them, it looks like they're all related to path. URL lib might also be something I need to import as well. So let's go ahead and fix those up. So this is the new way of working with paths. Rather than using os.path that works with strings, we work with path objects. Rob has been doing a lot of OO design recently. And so people have gone to OO for paths now. It allows a lot of beautiful magic. So from pathlib import path. Anybody want to point out something that's wrong with this line in terms of style? The style guide, some guidelines that I mentioned at the very beginning, some best practices, so that people can find your imports and know whether they're there. And so you in the future can find any imports and know whether pathlib has been imported or not, especially when you have a long list of maybe a dozen or more of these things. The other thing I need to import is, while y'all are thinking about that style error, I'll do another style error and import a correctness fix, which is that, not pathlib, URL lib. Import. Go ahead.
If you're talking about alphabetical order, I think that it didn't apply there because the from, you do separate the froms. Don't you do base level imports separate from?
Oh, you may know a PEP8
So I think you were right the first time.
Oh, okay. That's not the style that I've used or tried to comply with. So the style guide that I like to comply with is LMNOPQRSTU. You're right. I thought it was, I like to do my imports, no matter whether it's I alphabetize it according to the base package name and the full path to the variables, but I intermingle them. That way I can find anything I'm looking for based on the base path, the base package name. But that's what I do. But you can do some research. That can be you can do that now in parallel to help the mob team if you want to figure out whether I'm right or you're right in terms of what's the PEP8 style guide or other style guides around it in terms of alphabetizing imports. Okay. Where are we at? So I think we fixed that bug. Do I want to? But I'm not going to actually. Well, now that we've got the 5,000, maybe it'll all run faster. Let's go ahead and do that. Did I save it? Hopefully, it's not doing. It should conclude a lot faster if I've done things correctly. So I may Control C that, but of course that's going to bork my. Yeah, I didn't save it, so it's not going to actually pay attention to that argument again. It's going to be another million long run that takes 4 minutes to import. So I'm going to Control C. I'm going to start all over again, so I don't have a BERT import. Now let's see if things work. It's not doing a lot of logging, which I expected. Double dash. We're definitely doing the change. We're definitely changing log.info string.vars.arg. So it should be immediately outputting at the info level. And I thought we'd be at the .info level if we did 2 V's. Read CSV not got an unexpected num rows. Ooh, n rows is what it's called. So let's do. I'm going to do a trick to Control Shift V. Read CSV, and this is. I guess this is not going to be effective. I'm going to do num rows instead. Num rows to search for every place where I've said num rows equals. In all my packages everywhere. I'm going to narrow it down a little bit. Let's say all the Python files, and let's say only in the nessvec package. So I'll right click nessvec, find in folder. I love Python Sublime because it allows me to see the actual filters, and so I can edit them and see what it's doing. So I could have typed them or use my mouse to do them. It basically gives you, then you can double click on those finds and go to the place it is. And I think the correct syntax is in rows. So you can quickly correct bugs using Control Shift F. Okay, great. I'm getting deeper into the errors. Invalid file path, or shoot, this is related, I think, to that other stuff that I was doing with constants and, well,
I got some of the imports info for you.
Great, thank you.
According to the PEP 8 style guide for Python, first on top is standard library imports, and then under that is related third-party imports, and then on the bottom would be local imports from your local application. Okay,
so say that again, and we'll try to do that to one of our imports on. Let's see, probably constants would be. This doesn't have any local imports, so let's do it on indexers. Okay, good. Talk to me, John.
So yeah, standard library imports, the ones where it just says import and then the name on top. And then with a space after that, or just underneath that, then the relative third-party imports from whatever imports.
Hang on a second. Could you read the actual guidelines that they say? Because standard library imports is not the same. So what I'm thinking we need to do, and you can see if this matches the logic that, as you understood it, as you're reading to me what the actual wording is.
I'll put it in the chat as well.
Oh, thank you. That's even easier.
Yeah, and it looks like it doesn't really address the from and the import. Is just more about the different types of sources, whether standard, third party, or local.
Exactly. Yeah. That's my understanding.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay, so logging is a standard library. NumPy is not a standard library, so that's a third-party package. So that goes down here. And then these are our local packages, so I'll put them third in the list. Pendescent, pandas. Oh, pandas comes before A comes before Y, so we need to put that LMNOP. That's a third-party package. PSUtil, that's a third-party package. S comes after A. Pen descent, third-party package. That's the one that this is all about, is doing Python nearest neighbor using gradient descent. That's what pen descent stands for. That's for finding nearest neighbors of these vectors. High-dimensional vectors are impossible to search. So to find the vectors that are near to something else, unless you can only do it approximately. This is a computer science problem that you guys will want to dig into at some point if you ever have to deal with high-dimensional vectors, like these 300-dimensional word vectors. Pathlib, path, that's a standard library. Time, standard library. Util, not standard library. That is C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U. Great. So at least we got the style right, but we don't have the correctness right because I'm doing something wrong. So, no, I'm trying to do, it's still pointing back to the old import. So I need to rerun. I think it's still pointing back to the old import. I think I need to exit and rerun, maybe? That doesn't make any sense. Because it's still, but this can happen sometimes, just so you know, whenever you see some old code appear in an error message, what that means is the Python bytecode, the PYC file, is the old version because you haven't refreshed the cache. Because until you have a new session, it won't try to recompile old files. It doesn't know that you changed the source code. It just goes straight to the PYC file. This is in order to keep Python imports happening fast. Instead of recompiling stuff all the time or even checking to see if anything's changed, it just assumes that the PYC file is the source of truth until you're starting fresh and it's never ever done an import of it before. I think it's still going to give us the same error message, but at least it will be pointing to a new line of code that has instead of num rows, it says n rows. I think that's what I saw. I thought I saw it say num rows. Yeah. Oh, I did the same thing probably somewhere else within indexers itself. Well, I thought that's where I corrected it. Let's find num rows. Yeah, okay. It's right here. I changed that and I saved it, so it should not appear in the error message. Raise value error. Got a value error being created. We've only got 2 minutes to fix this bug. Do we have a chance? Text file reader, read, func. Wow, this is deep, deep, deep. Okay. What's going wrong? We've got a value error. This is the overall error we're dealing with. Invalid file path or buffer, object type, class. So this is that whole magic that I created in terms of, let's see, let's trace the actual code. Oh no, it's in. So that file, let's display that file path using the log args. Okay. So download if necessary is trying to find it, it's returning none, and none is then being passed into read CSV. And so that's why we're having this error. So at least I know the source of the error. I'll have to fix it in the future. I'll put a fix me. Another good practice, whenever you start to wrap up a coding session, in order to help you with context switching in the future, put some unfinished line of code so it'll throw an exception or explain your diagnosis of a bug that already exists there. So I'm going to put here file path is none because of download if necessary, magic causing bug. See, I'm telling it, I'm not even giving it a file path. I'm giving it the name of something that should be in this large files dictionary within constants. Let's find large files. And I'm creating it in a very crazy way, but somewhere in here should be a key value pair. And so I'm creating it with this I'm only taking the last two of the hyphen separated attributes of any file name that can be downloaded from this Google or from all these different sources of word vector analogies. So the name is gonna be something like analogy sat or analogy semival or analogy hyphen Google. And so the name here needs to be analogy hyphen Google, not word analogies Google. So I fixed the bug in the course of explaining it to you, and that's why we have model programming, because it's like talking to a rubber duck. You learn a lot, except you're all better than a rubber duck, because sometimes you'll actually help me. I'll just leave that as a fix meter to do to test that. Thank you for your patience, Neba. It's now time for a one-on-one session, and I'll stop sharing if I can. Come on, please. Woohoo! Found the magic location in the stop share button.